Welcome everyone to McLane Church, and thank you for being with us today. I hope the next hour is encouraging, insightful, and thought-provoking for you. I also hope that no matter how you are joining us today, that you find yourself connecting with God. Whether you are watching from your couch, listening on the radio in your car, or maybe you're bundled up and walking in the snow with your phone, I'm thrilled that you are taking the time to connect with God and doing that through the vehicle of McLane Church. Why not let us know who you are and how you're connecting? Do that with a click on our website or a call to our office at 814-734-1907. We are always happy to hear from you, and we're here for you as well, to pray for you, talk with you, and to help you grow closer to the God who made you. One of the ways that many of you are growing is through the Immerse Bible Reading Plan. I hope you are enjoying that. I sure know Andrea is. She worships with us through our online site and is here today to tell us how her reading has been going.
Hi everybody, it's Andrea Myers joining you from my home in Morgantown, West Virginia. My husband and I, Jim, relocated here in August of 2020 and continue to stay engaged with McLane Church virtually. So most recently, I started the Immerse Beginnings series, and I'm doing that by reading along with a podcast in the morning. I let the podcast kind of read to me. That helps me with staying focused, comprehension, hearing somebody else speak the names that sound kind of foreign to us. I also continue to stay engaged with conversations through the Facebook page, the Immerse Group Facebook page, and most recently I joined the Zoom live stream podcast this past Monday, and that was enjoyable as well. So if you haven't had a chance to do it yet, it's not too late. I would encourage you to check it out. Take care. Bye-bye.
Well, if you'd like to know more about Immerse, just go to our website, mclanechurch.org, and click on the Immerse button. One more way to grow and to be enriched in your faith is through prayer. And we want to give you an opportunity to spend some deliberate time praying and growing closer to God. On Ash Wednesday, February 17th, our Edinburgh location will be open all day from 7 a.m. until 6 p.m. for you to have a quiet, spacious, and safe place to pray and reflect. Prayer guides will be available on that day, and there will also be pastor-led segments throughout the day, which will include 15 minutes of scripture, prayer, and a time of communion. If you'd rather pray at home that day, no problem. Prayer guides are available on our website. You may also join us for our 12:15 pastor-led segment live on our Facebook page. Just be sure to have some juice and bread available at home for communion. Now, as we worship today, may we be a reflection of the words of Psalm 71:8, which say, "My mouth is filled with your praise, declaring your splendor all day long."
Welcome to McLane Church. Thank you so much for joining us from wherever you are. Psalm 150 says, "Let everything that has breath worship the Lord." Would you worship with us?
When night has fallen, when fear is coming, still you're calling me. When faith is lost and my hope exhausted, you will be my strength. When my mind says I'm not good enough, God, you're enough for me. Yeah, I've decided I'm not giving up, 'cause you won't give up on me. You won't give up on me. Your love is holding on and it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo. Your love is holding on and it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo, echo in my soul. Yeah. In every season, you keep repeating promises to me. Whoa, whoa. Now there's no stopping In Philippians 3, Paul writes that everything else is worthless when compared with the infinite value of knowing Christ. It's a great reminder that the priority we place on our relationship with Jesus should be more important than anything else. A relationship with Christ has no monetary value, but that's not because it is worthless. That's because it is priceless.
My worth is not in what I own, not in the strength of flesh and bone, but in the costly wounds of love at the cross. My worth is not in skill or name, in win or lose, in pride or shame, but in the blood of Christ that flowed at the cross. I rejoice in my Redeemer, greatest treasure, wellspring of my soul. I will trust in him, no other. My soul is satisfied in him alone. And the summer flowers may fade and die, fame, youth, and beauty hurry by, but life eternal calls to us at the cross. I will not boast in wealth or might, or human's wisdom fleeting flight, but I will boast in knowing Christ at the cross. I rejoice in my Redeemer, greatest treasure, wellspring of my soul. I will trust in him, no other. My soul is satisfied in him alone. To wonders here that I confess my worth and my unworthiness, my value fixed, my ransom paid at the cross. I rejoice in my Redeemer, greatest treasure, wellspring of my soul. I will trust in him, no other. My soul is satisfied in him alone. I will trust in my Redeemer, greatest treasure, wellspring of my soul. I will trust in him, no other. My soul is satisfied in him alone.
God has blessed us richly as a church. Our ability to remove barriers to give people access to Christ is so often generated by your generosity, supporting the many ministries which affect the lives around us. As we worship through giving today, thank you for your faithfulness.
Well, welcome to everyone who's joining us this week, and whether you're joining us online or at one of our in-person opportunities, we are so glad that you are a part of what we're doing at McLane Church. And you know, in this interesting new reality we find ourselves, we've found that the things that we're trying to do as a church are changing as we continue to think about how to be most effective in these new cultural realities. So please understand that although we've resumed in-person gatherings at each of our locations, we're not promoting people attending those in-person gatherings necessarily, which is to say, if an in-person gathering is helpful to you, please attend at one of our opportunities. But again, if you're finding meaningful connection through other venues, whether that's through one of our online worship experiences or maybe through one of our smaller gathering events, please know the important thing is that we all stay attentive to our spirituality. And we believe that one of the primary ways we stay attentive to our spirituality is by staying connected to the life of the church. And you can do that in multiple ways. So again, whether that's through regularly joining on Zoom with your small group, maybe attending a grief share event, maybe joining us through Zoom at our Immerse class on Monday nights, or coming in person to one of our locations, the important thing is to stay connected, to stay attentive to your spiritual life. It's so important that we don't miss that we don't let that fall off to the side during these strange and unusual times. So please keep that in mind, and our study of the book of Leviticus very much helps us do that. So we're going to dive right into our topic for this week, doing that in a bit different format. So grab your Bible, grab a notebook, plan on being attentive to what these ancient documents have to teach us about how to live life in this present world. Well, hey everyone, as we continue our study of this ancient document that we know is the book of Leviticus, we're going to use a bit different format this week in that I'm joined by my friend Joel Natale, and those of you who know Joel know that he is the manager of Talk Erie Radio, and we have the opportunity once a month to do a show that Joel calls a conversation or an hour with my pastor, and for an hour every month we get to talk about a number of different issues, and the Bible always gets worked in there somewhere. So we thought it might be helpful periodically during this series on this Old Testament book for us to sit together on stage and talk about some of the real life questions that have emerged as we've tried to engage in this ancient text. So Joel's going to play the role of the host this week, just as if we were doing his radio show. And we're going to try to dialogue around some of the issues that the book of Leviticus has raised. So, Joel, welcome to this show. You're usually welcoming me to your show. I guess I can be welcoming you to our show this week. And I know you've been following along not only in the study of Leviticus, but you've been very involved in the Immerse reading, and found that to be very, very valuable, and maybe even say a word of encouragement to folks who are doing that right now, of how important that's been to you.
Well, Brian, I've been reading the Bible, for many years, obviously 40, 50 years, but this is a unique experience of reading it as if I'm reading a novel, as if I'm reading a historical narrative, and it brings you from chapter and verse to kind of the edge of your seat.
Yeah.
And it's just a different and very rewarding experience. It's amazing how the ancient documents can be so rich and so challenging as you read them in that Immerse Beginnings book. And so I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
Yeah, as you and I have talked on the side, our tendency has been to certainly treat the Bible like a textbook. When we have an issue, when we have a question, we try to go to chapter and verse to find the answer. And not that that's a completely inappropriate approach to the biblical text, but it's a limited approach. There's so much more there. There's so much more breadth. The text is meant to be understood in so much more expansive of ways, and this way of reading it helps us recapture some of that. So
I know it might sound silly, but the idea of knowing that the biblical characters are flawed, like I'm flawed, actually gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah.
Because God loved them deeply and redeemed them.
Yeah, and that everything doesn't get tied up or wrapped up in a nice, neat package, as much as we historically have tried to do that with the text, because we're somewhat uncomfortable with the things in the text that don't resolve the way we think they should. And yet, again, our appreciation for a very real God who works with very real people in a very real world. It comes alive.
Yeah, we tend to want that 28-minute happy days ending
Exactly.
for all of us that grew up in the 70s,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. Well, I know you've been following along with our study of Leviticus, and you've had some questions that have come to your mind as you've listened and watched. So let's just dive in with some of the things that have been on your mind as you've listened to us talk about this ancient book.
Well, you know, you ended last week's sermon with, what kind of world are we trying to create? And you know, you said corporately, personally, family, workplace, school, society. This is the quintessential, the ultimate question, isn't it, Brian?
It is. And it's unquestionably what this document is trying to answer. Because again, as we said in our background sermons to this start of this series, that the people of Israel at this period of time, they only know one model of life, or one model of the world. And it's a model where the rich rule over the poor, the people in power oppress those who are powerless, and perhaps most significantly, religion or the gods are on the side of those in power. The Egyptians are world leaders at this moment of time, because it's understood that the gods of the ancient world favor the Egyptians. And they don't favor people like the Israelites. So the Israelites are enslaved. The Egyptians are the people in power. The Egyptians are the people who have the resources. The Egyptians are building an empire. Now, if that's the only view of the world you know, and you're now given the opportunity to create or develop a new world, what kind of world are you going to create or develop? You're going to create or develop a world where you now are the oppressor and others are the oppressed. You're going to create a world where now the gods are on your side and not on the side of your enemies. You're going to create a world that is full of imbalance and injustice. You're just going to be on the side that all that favors. It's like our experience, you know, in elementary school. When we were bullied or picked on, we knew how that felt, but so often when we suddenly had the opportunity to bully or pick on someone else, we did the same thing that was so hurtful to us. Why did we do that? We did it because that's the only thing we knew. That was the only model of life we understood. The people of Israel understand this one model of life, and God is trying to change that view because He wants this group of people to show the world a new model, to show the world a new way to live. And boy, by extension, as you start to think about that and the implications for us as the present day people of God, showing the world a new model by which we're to live, wow, that like both excites you and kind of terrifies you, doesn't it?
Well, the challenge is that we still have a lot of that old thinking in our brains. And I go back to your classic metaphor is, how are you going to treat the Walmart employee that you encounter? You know, how generous are we going to be to those that can't give us anything?
Right.
Can't give us any status.
Right.
Can't. I mean, God's no respecter of persons, but how do we really live that?
There's this innate understanding in the world that has seemingly been there from the beginning, that you know, the rich are to rule over the poor, the people in power are to rule over the powerless, and at the end of the day, what it's all about is getting what I can get out of it. And the people of Israel are being called by God to show the world a new model. So we're going to see in the next few weeks as we get into the text of Leviticus. Now in this new model, the rich don't rule over the poor, the rich care for the poor. The people in power don't oppress the powerless. They use their power to create a world where everyone is treated justly. The driving motive in life is not get all you can for you. The driving motive in life is yes, to be responsible for your life, and yes, to create a life that you can enjoy. But doing that always mindful and aware of the people around you, doing so mindful and aware that wealth and things are not the end of existence. Now here's the fascinating thing, we're jumping way ahead, but it's important for us to set this all in context. Israel will be given some clear instruction in the book of Leviticus about how to create this kind of world. Leave the corners of your field when you harvest them. Don't harvest everything, because there are poor people who need to take what you haven't harvested. Put a fence around the flat roof of your house, so people who are visiting at your party and have had a little too much to drink don't fall off the roof and kill themselves. Be attentive to your neighbor's needs. God's going to introduce these kind of things in the book of Leviticus. Sadly, the nation of Israel forgets a lot of these things. And as we move forward, you know, a few centuries from the setting that's described in the book of Leviticus, what we discover is that the Israelite people, they've just created another empire. They've created another empire where the rich rule over the poor, where the powerful oppress the powerless, where those that the gods seemingly favor, now the Israelites enslave those who the gods don't favor. Solomon is building an empire and a temple using slave labor. Slave labor to build a temple. The nation that was enslaved in Egypt and had to make bricks so the Egyptians could build temples are now enslaving other people to build their temple. And God said, no. So what happens? You know, the Babylonians destroy the temple and the people of Israel go into exile. That's a bunch of history. Bring it down to the personal level. It's all of our tendencies to cry out when we're in oppression, you know, when we're under it. Right. But as soon as we get on top of it, it's easy to forget where we came from, and it's easy to begin to do to other people what other people were doing to us that caused us so much harm and pain. And Joel, I mean, you have as much connection to the Christian community as I do. Think about the multiple times you and I have not only played that out in our personal lives, but we've observed it played out in the name of the church. Yeah.
It's tragic, and the thought that we forgot, you know, that the nation of Israel forgot, that we forget on a regular basis is a tragedy. But I want to be on the solution side here. So you think about, you know, if Exodus is season 1 of this drama, right, and Leviticus is season 2, what are the things that are in Exodus that turn people around, right? Because because there is going to be that foundation of, of that strong nation. That what we read in the Immerse. Abraham was, Abraham was committed to multiple times.
Right.
You're going to have a nation further than the stars in the sky.
Right. One of the biggest turning points in the book of Exodus is the understanding of religion and the understanding of how the gods function. So remember, as we've said before, the ancient world, the setting of the book of Leviticus, it is a very religious world. Dare say there are really no atheists in the ancient world. Everyone is religious. Everyone believes that there are gods who have profound influence on our everyday lives. In the world model that the people of Israel and Egypt know, the gods are always on the side of those in power. Sure. The gods always favor the people who are in charge. That's why they're in charge, And so for Israel to be introduced to this God who is not on the side of Pharaoh, this God is on the side of the slaves. This is a radical reversal of ancient religious understanding. And of course, it's the model that Jesus adopted, latched onto, tried to live out. That this God, the true God, is a God who cares about all people. Yeah. But isn't it fascinating that in many ways in the Christian church, we're still living with an ancient world model? That God is on the side of the people that we're on the side of. That God is on the side of the people we like. That God is on the side of the groups that talk our language. What if God is really on the side of all people? What does that mean in terms of how we view the world around us? Crazy stuff.
You're again back to your preaching over the many years that I've sat under it. You're never looking at someone that isn't loved infinitely by God.
Yeah, and that was shared with me by a leader probably 2 decades ago when he made that statement, and it was just like, it was so revolutionary to me because it was one of those things that, I believe it in my mind, but that's not really how I have to think or act, right? I can still think or act practically like there are favorites, and of course I'm one of them, that God is He's a little more in love with me than he is with, this person or that person or whomever out there. But one of the ideas that God is trying to introduce into the world is that God has this deep passion and concern for all people, and therefore those who identify with him as his people have to share that same conviction and that same perspective. And yet, Joel, you and I don't do that.
No, it's true.
We still have these categories, and how much different the world would be if we let our thinking be challenged by this ancient idea. Yeah.
I want to pick up on the creation order because in last week's sermon, you talked about the 7 and the tent of meeting and how the tabernacle is representative of the creation order. And again, many years of your preaching, I'm thinking about how Jesus is kind of the hinge of history to bring us back to what God intended. Can you unpack that?
Oh, yeah. This is so amazing, so powerful, because it's really clear when you look at the text of Exodus that as the tabernacle is being described, there are these constant allusions back to the creation story, back to the opening of Genesis. The tabernacle and the later temple in Judaism will function, one of its primary functions will be to regularly remind the people of Israel how the world was intended by God to work. How it was intended by God to work. And think about, even if you aren't familiar with the ancient tabernacle or the description of it or the temples within Judaism, think about a present day cathedral or very nice church. There are certain things that the design was to remind the people of. One, God's presence was understood as being in the tabernacle. So central was this reminder that God is present in creation, that God doesn't stand afar off, that God is present. He's in the messiness of creation. He's here with us. He's accessible. The design of the tabernacle reminded people that there was an order and a structure to creation. There were distinctions within the creation order that helped people organize and manage creation. And we're going to talk about that in a few weeks, about how, when life is feeling out of control to you, sometimes the best thing you can do is clean your car or organize your sock drawer. Do something that brings a little sense of order back to your realm of creation, because creation was designed with an order. And it was designed with ritual. And we're going to talk a lot about ritual, and it's one thing that some of us in the Christian church, depending on our background or tradition, we missed a little of the importance of order and process in approaching God, because what Leviticus is going to do is it's going to help people see there are ways that you can approach God so you don't have to wonder about God. There are ways that I can engage with God that God has revealed to me, so I don't have to wonder, am I doing it the right way? Or does God like this? Or is this the way I should be talking to or addressing God? The tabernacle would institute some of those processes so that people could know. And again, fast forward to what this teaches us today, we've lost so much of an understanding of the importance of worship. And what we're learning as a church these days is that worship can happen in a lot of different ways. It no longer has to be gathering hundreds of people at one of our locations for 4 songs and a sermon. Worship can have a lot of different forms. But an intentional means whereby I'm regularly reminding myself that God is present in creation, that there is an order or design to creation. This is all going somewhere. There's a purpose to us. It's not all random. And that there are certain processes that I can engage in that connect me to the reality of God, that I can be sure of and certain of, even when my own mind isn't very clear about what I should do in a given moment. This ancient tabernacle, it set in place a practice that is still with us today when we recognize it and take advantage of it.
Talk about the power of God in our lives. Again, you mentioned that the 12 plagues kind of indicate his omnipotence. Well, he's still the same powerful God that could be present with. If we bring both of those together, the power and the presence, that has true indications for our everyday lives.
Oh, absolutely, Joel. And the thing is, we understand so little of it.
Yeah.
You know, God is so much beyond our ability to comprehend in his power and in his presence. I mean, even the fact that we use a masculine pronoun always to refer to him, which is certainly following the biblical tradition. We know God is bigger than any gender. We can't pick one, male or female to represent God. He's bigger than that. You know.
But don't we put limits on God? We put
all
limits
the time. But when we
on what He's allowed to affect in our lives, and how much power He's allowed to push us towards.
Absolutely. And so when you look at the plagues in the book of Exodus, what they're doing is they're trying again in an ancient world mindset, in an ancient world understanding. They're trying to show God as sovereign over, or sovereign, think of, completely powerful over, completely in control over every dimension of creation. He's in control of the river. He's in control of the animals. He's in control of the flies, the gnats. He's in control of life itself. And the idea behind this presentation of God is not to say, well, if God can control even the flies, how come I have mosquitoes at my last picnic? It's not to say that. It's to say, no, God has the ability to enter in to any and every dimension of life that we need His presence in, and He is big enough to enter in such a way that His presence and power is always manifest for our ultimate good, which may not mean eliminating the mosquitoes at our next picnic.
Yeah, it's He doesn't always deliver us out of it, but He follows us through. So last thing for you then, I'm going to paraphrase Leviticus 1:1.
Okay, yes.
The Lord called to Brian and spoke to him.
Yeah.
The Lord continues to call Brian and speak to you.
Yeah. From the tent of meeting. And that's an important thing to add on there, because it tells us that there is a context in which God routinely speaks. And that context seems to be when I am intentional about my spirituality. And so again, going back to how we opened the service today, we recognize in this new reality that people's connection to the church, it's not going to look like it did a year ago or 10 years ago. There are people that I meet who are connected to our church these days who I know will never, ever walk through our doors. Pastor Chris and I had a chance a month or so ago to talk to two pastors in Germany who have been listening to our online broadcast for years and reached out to us, who wanted to have a conversation. Well, they're never going to come to one of our physical locations, or at least not on a regular basis, but they're intentional about their spirituality. They're intentional about this engagement with God. And I think this verse 1 of Leviticus, God continued to call to Moses from the tent of meeting, lets us know that God is always speaking. We need to be intentional about listening to Him and hearing Him. And again, that's not to say that when I'm driving in my car to work, God might give me a thought. God might speak a word to me that is relevant and pertinent in that moment. But I think it says when I try to be intentional about listening to God and hearing from Him, and again, whether that's by regularly watching a church service online, whether it's by daily, journaling and Bible reading, whether it's by, weekly gathering with a small group where we talk about God and how He's influencing our lives, that intentionality lets me hear God in a way that Moses, in the ancient world, heard Him.
And it really puts us all in this great story. Like we're part of this.
Part of a story that started at creation,
Yeah.
that started as God tried to introduce into the world a new way to live, a new way to approach life. And I guess, my final charge kind of to our congregation this week would be to one, think about that intentionality with your spirituality. Think about what are the practices that weekly and monthly you can engage with, that the church can help you engage with, that would allow that intentionality. But think too, Joel, kind of how we started this. What kind of world are you creating? What kind of world are you trying to show the world? Is it a world where God really is compassionate toward all people? A world where the ethic of love really governs everything we do? Or are you still living with an ancient world mindset where God really still plays favorites and you're favored and other people aren't? Are you still living with a model that says the powerful still get to exercise power over the powerless? Are you living as that third grader who was bullied once, but now you're in a place where you can bully other people? So you're really just creating the same world you came from? Or are you really showing the world a different model, a model that, again, over the coming weeks, the book of Leviticus is going to continue to unfold for us?
Can't wait.
So thanks, Joel, so much for being with us. We're going to do this again, and please continue to gather with us in whatever way makes best sense for you. Stay intentional about your spirituality. We'll have another episode on Leviticus coming next week.
Letting go of every single dream, I lay each one down at your feet. Every moment of my wandering never changes what you see. I've tried to win this war, I confess. My hands are weary, I need your rest. Mighty warrior, king of the fight. No matter what I face, you're by my side. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answer as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. Truth is, you know what tomorrow brings. There's not a day ahead you have not seen. So in all things be my life and breath. I want what you want, Lord, and nothing less. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answer as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. You are my strength and comfort. You are my steady hand. You are my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand. Your ways are always higher. Your plans are always good. There's not a place where I go you've not already stood. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answer as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you.
Well, I hope this time of worship was both unique and encouraging for you today. And as you step back into life, may you know that you do not step into it alone, because God is with you. A God whom we learned today is on the side of all people. So let me leave you with this challenge based on that truth. This week, as you go through life, talk to God, connect with Him, stay attentive to your spiritual life, and remember, God does not play favorites. In fact, we are all His favorite. And so ask yourself this question in the week ahead: how would I like people to treat me this week? And then treat the people around you in that very way. May God bless you, and we'll see you right back here again soon.